Chapter 1. The Financial Expert by R.K. Narayan. An overview. Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayanaswamy, also known as R.K. Narayan, 1906–2001, is famous for simple and subtle narration in his literary works. Along with Raja Rao and Mulk Rajanand, he was one of the most prominent and well-known writers of early Indian writing in English. Most of his stories were set in the fictional town of Malgudi. His works captured the essence of ordinary life. His first novel, Swami and Friends, was published in 1935. Besides novels, he wrote short stories, travelogues, condensed versions of Indian epics in English, and his memoir. Born to a schoolteacher father, he took the name R.K. Narayan at the suggestion of his close friend and another great author, Graham Greene. There are 14 novels in the oeuvre of R.K. Narayan. He sent the manuscript of his novel, Swami and Friends, to a friend in Oxford, and it eventually landed in the lap of Graham Greene, who helped to get the book published in 1935. Among the best-received Narayan's novels are The English Teacher, 1945, Waiting for the Mahatma, 1955, The Guide, 1958, The Man-Eater of Malgudi, 1961, The Vendor of Sweets, 1967, and A Tiger for Malgudi, 1983. Narayan also wrote a number of short stories. The collections include Lolly Road, 1956, A Horse and Two Goats and Other Stories, 1970, Under the Banyan Tree and Other Stories, 1985, and The Grandmother's Tale, 1993. In addition to works of nonfiction, chiefly memoirs, he also published shortened modern prose version of two Indian epics, the Ramayana, 1972, and the Mahabharata, 1978. He won numerous awards and adulation during his lifetime. These include the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1958, the Padma Bhushan in 1964, the A.C. Benson Medal by the Royal Society of Literature in 1980, besides the Padma Vibhushan in 2000. He was nominated to the Rajya Sabha in 1989. This great storyteller passed away on May 13, 2001 at the age of 94. About the novel. Margaya, aged 42, wants to make money in dishonest and unethical ways. He leads his life by advising and assisting the ordinary peasants who came to Malgudi to take loans from the Central Cooperative Land Mortgage Bank. Margaya conducts his business while sitting beneath a banyan tree. His business is assisting and advising the residents of Malgudi in obtaining loans from the bank. He carries a tiny box with him that has a pen, an ink pot, blank papers, and bank loan application papers. He is really passionate about accumulating cash. He wants to become wealthy in order to uphold his standing, reputation, and honor in the community. He fights with the bank secretary who ignores and taunts him. His enigmatic son Balu dumps his account book in the gutter. His financial career was ended by these two occurrences. On the advice of a priest, to perform Lakshmi Puja for wealth, he travels to a remote body of water to fetch red lotus. There he encounters Dr. Pal, who invites him to his home and provides him a book on bed life. Margaya was initially apprehensive about the book but eventually invested his interest. By selling his copyrights to his publisher partner for a one-time payment, he demonstrates his brilliance. He launches his money-lending business with this cash, demonstrates his skill at obtaining interest from his clientele once more. 4. He opens a money depositing business. Guru Raj, the blanket vendor, is the first client that his friend Dr. Pal brings. More and more people started coming to Margaya to deposit their money to get attractive 20% interest rate that he offers on deposits. People took their cash out of the banks to deposit with him. A virtual downpour of cash came in. Margaya transported the cash in bags. He is unable to count all the money. He was now the wealthiest man in bank in Malgudi. He has acquired a luxury car and has grown rich. In order to escape the burden of homework, school, and exams, Balu, his son, fled to Madras. A letter is received reporting the death of Balu. To confirm the news, Margaya travels to Madras. Luckily, he finds Balu still alive and brings him back. He then marries him to a beautiful girl Brinda and purchases for the couple a new villa in Lali Extension. Dr. Pal, who has helped Margaya, now thorns up to be an evil spirit. He develops intimacy with Balu and his wife, visits the residents daily and plays cards with them. As if it is not enough, he spoils Balu. First, he eggs him on to demand from his father his share of the ancestral property and then takes him to a house of bad repute, inhabited by loose girls. When Margaya comes to know all this from Brinda, he gets enraged. When he is about to return in midnight, he sees the baby Austin car stopping at the gate of Balu's house. Balu sets out of the car, whispers something in the ears of Pal, at which the loose girls, sitting in the back, begin to giggle. Margaya loses cool and control, drags Pal from the car, and beats him with his sandals so forcefully that blood oozes out from the cuts he received on his face. Pal takes revenge on Margaya. He spreads rumor that Margaya has become bankrupt. People pour in, garrow his house and clamor for their money. Margaya cannot pay all the deposit plus huge interest because he has not invested the deposit money. His life is now in danger. His elder brother, who has always helped him in crisis, brings the police and a lawyer. Margaya fills in the insolvency papers. The story now. 5. Comes full circle. Margaya is now a poor person and thinks of restarting his banking business, sitting under the banyan tree. The character of Margaya. His real name was Krishna, but he was known as Margaya. He begins his career as a petty money lender, doing his business under a banyan tree in front of the Central Cooperative Land Mortgage Bank in Malgudi. He helps the shareholders of the bank to borrow money at a small interest and lend it to the needy at a higher interest. In the process, he makes money for himself. The secretary of the bank in Arul Das, the peon, sees from his box the loan application forms he has managed to get from the bank through its shareholders. They treat him with contempt and threaten to take action against him. Margaya is unable to carry on his business after Balu, his son, throws his account book into the gutter. It had all the entries of his business dealings with his clients. He presents his horoscope to an astrologer, who assures him that if he performs puja to Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, a wonderful time is coming for him. Ash from a red lotus and ghee prepared from milk from a gray cow are used in the 40-day puja. Margaya does the puja and emerges from it full of expectations for a successful future. Dr. Pal, who sells him the manuscript of a book named Bed Life, for whatever ready cash Margaya's purse contains, assures him that the book renamed Domestic Harmony will sell in tens of thousands if only he can find a publisher. Maiden-Lal, a man from the north, reads the script and agrees to print and publish it on a 50-50 partnership basis. The book is at once popular and Margaya's fortune is made. Margaya is again ruined by his son, Balu. He had put him to school in great style, getting the blessings of his brother and sister-in-law next door. His wealth had enabled him to become the secretary of the school managing committee. 6. He had engaged a private tutor for his son and instructed him to thrash the boy whenever necessary. But Baloo was not good at his studies. He failed to pass SSLC. Margaya attempts to persuade him to take the examination a second time. The result is that Baloo seizes the school-leaving certificate book, tears it into 4 quarters, and throws them into the gutter, the same gutter which closed its dark waters over Margaya's red book of accounts. Now it carries away the school certificate book. Then he runs away from home. A few days later, there is a letter from Madras telling Margaya that his son is dead. The brother's family immediately comes to his help, though Margaya feels he can do without their help and wonders whether this will change the existing relationship between them. He leaves for Madras and discovers through the good offices of a fellow traveler, a police inspector in plain clothes, that his son is not really dead, traces the boy and brings him home. He wants to marry him to a girl named Brinda, the daughter of the owner of a tea estate in Mempi Hills. When a pundit after an honest study declares that the horoscopes of Baloo and Brinda do not match, he is curtly dismissed with a fee of 1 rupee. Another astrologer, whom Dr. Paul finds, gives it in writing that the 2 horoscopes match perfectly and is paid 75 rupees for his pains. Money can dictate the very stars in their courses. Baloo and his wife are helped to set up an establishment of their own in Lali Extension. Margaya, wishing to draw Dr. Pal away from his son, seeks his help in attracting deposits from black marketeers on the promise of interest of 29%. If I get 20,000 rupees deposit each day and pay 15,000 rupees in interest, I have still 5,000 rupees a day left in my hands as my own, Margaya calculates. Margaya grows rich. It is now necessary for him to have a car. Every nook and corner of his house is stuffed with sacks full of currency notes. He is on the right side of the police, contributes to the war fund when driven to do so, and works day and night with his accounts and money bags, though his wife is unhappy at his straining himself so much. One day Margaya visits his son in Lali Extension. He finds Brinda and her child. The girl cannot hold back her tears while narrating Baloo's activities. When Margaya gets out of the house, he finds a car halting in front of it, out of which emerges Baloo. His companions are Dr. Pal and a couple of women of the town. The enraged father pulls Dr. Pal out of the car, beats him and dismisses the 2 women with contempt. The next day Dr. Pal, with a bandaged face, whispers to all and sundry that things are not going well with Margaya's concern. Hundreds of people come to Margaya and ask for their deposits. All the accumulated wealth is disbursed, still hundreds of people cannot be satisfied. The run on the bank leads to Margaya's filing of an insolvency petition. And thus, like a house of cards, the wealth Margaya had accumulated is blown away. He advises his son to take his place under the banyan tree with the old box, and when he says, "How can I go and sit there? What will people say?" he replies, "Very well, then I will do it." The theme of the novel is lust for money, but Margaya is no monster of greed and wickedness. R.K. Narayan has succeeded in humanizing him and showing that, despite his lust for money, he is a human being like us. The character of Dr. Pal. One of the key figures in the book, The Financial Expert, is Dr. Pal. He has a really complicated personality. He gave Margaya unselfish assistance as he rose to success. He offered him the draft of his book, Bed Life, in exchange for a pitiful quantity of money. He wanted him to make a lot of money off the book. He is a journalist and has a wealth of knowledge. 8. In the beginning, We witness his ambitious side where he tells Margaya about his plan to launch a sociology clinic for solving domestic problems of husband and wife. He told him he was a sociologist. Margaya finds his ideas vulgar. Pal has no regard for a settled life. He has no fixed aim in life. He lives like a vagabond. He holds rational thoughts and emotions play no role. Perhaps that's why he didn't marry. Money is not his concern, and if he wanted money, he could earn a lot. It is undisputed because his one book brought immense wealth to Margaya. He could write more books, but his changing interests or lack of focus prevented him to lead a stable life. He was revered as a learned man. Interestingly, Pal became both the cause of Margaya's success and undoing. Pal involves Balu in immoral activities which infuriated Margaya and he attacked him. Later, Margaya came to know that Pal was Balu's companion and he indulged him in playing cards, drinking alcohol and womanizing. Margaya knew Pal's might and he was thinking of sending Pal to another city for some errands to protect his son from his bad company, but the plan didn't work out. Ultimately, Margaya's spar with Pal ended with disastrous implications for Margaya and he lost all his wealth and became poor. It can be said that the character of Pal was not a simple or a conventional one. He has some merits but some flaws as well. His flaws became the reason for parting with Margaya. The character of Meenakshi. Margaya's wife named Meenakshi is a modest, homely and traditional woman. She is untouched by any sort of ambition. Her circle of worries is circumscribed by domestic chores, welfare of her husband and her son Balu, and a moderate desire for money which is enough to pull them through. This aspect of her personality comes in glaring contrast with that of her husband, who is 9. Relentlessly obsessed by an unlimited desire for money. His insatiable avarice for money is described by the author like the desire of a fanatical mountaineer who sets his heart on reaching the summit of Everest. He might be standing on the highest peak, yet he can never feel that he has attained the highest. Their contrasting attitudes in this regard become more pronouncedly clear in the reaction that each one shows when their son Balu runs away from home. Margaya is able to withstand the loss of his son because of the external strength and prowess he gets from his wealth. His possession of wealth has supplanted a natural fatherly instinct for the truant son. His rank materialistic attitude is depicted in strong words. Margaya asks his wife to demand from him any amount of money because he thinks that money will divert her attention from the son's loss. But he is sadly mistaken in this regard, as she spurns his proposal, saying, "What will I do with money?" Margaya's wife is a patient, tolerant person who bears the occasional overbearing moods and tantrums of her husband. She asks Margaya about Balu when he comes in the kitchen where she is busy cooking something. He replies to her ill-temperedly, "Probably rolling in the gutter." She remains cool-headed to the exchange of hot words that takes place between Margaya and his son. When the latter has failed repeatedly in the SSLC, she knows that her husband has become more peremptory in his manners because of his affluence. She attributes his temperamental irascibility to overwork and tension he has to undergo in his profession. Her accommodating and peaceful disposition is evident in her understanding that the best way to attain some peace of mind in life was to maintain silence. Ultimately, she found that things resolved themselves in the best manner possible or fizzled out. She proves very helpful to Margaya during his penance for 40 days undertaken by him for the propitiation of goddess Lakshmi. Sometimes, a quarrel takes place between the two, but generally she avoids such scenes. He spends 100 rupees out of the 200 rupees he has got. He hopes that he will get money as a miracle immediately after the conclusion of the puja. He does not move out of the house in pursuit of earning. She urges upon him to go out of the house to earn something. A quarrel ensues between the duo over this point. Further, Margaya tells her that he is giving up the publication of the book, Domestic Harmony, for two reasons. First, the sale of the book has gone down. Secondly, the book is vicious and corrupting for the young minds, and hence he does not want his name to be associated with it any longer. Her love for her only son, Balu, is inexhaustible. She gives birth to him a decade after her marriage. She undergoes a course of penance and hardship for the well-being of the child. She, along with her husband, goes to the god at Tirupati, dressed in a saffron-dyed sari, had carried the infant in arms and walked behind him, as he went to 10 houses and begged alms. There are other instances in which she reiterates her deeply affectionate feeling for the son. She quarrels with her husband for his negligence in not protecting the child after Balu's repeated failures in the SSLC. She prepares for him extra nourishing dishes and gives him extra dose of milk and fruits during the examination days, so that he is able to stand the strain. She remains lost in ideas about her son. Her condition is described in subtle words. The anonymous postcard bearing the news of Balu's death tires out whatever patience is left in her. She weeps, cries, and rolls over the floor. Her hair is untied and her eyes are swollen. She looks like a stranger, with her face swollen and disfigured with weeping. A number of women, neighbors, Margaya's brother and his sister-in-law gather round her in order to console her. She prevails upon Margaya to go to Madras to verify the news. Despite his unwillingness, he goes there and discovers Balu in a cinema theater with the help of a police inspector whom he meets coincidentally in the railway compartment while traveling to Madras. He brings Balu back home with a promise that he need not bother about the examination. He tells him, "You eat. 11. Rest and grow fat, that is all you are expected to do, and take as much money as you like." Balu's coming back home alive is a matter of unbounded joy for Meenakshi. The very style of her life undergoes a sea change. She is no more morose and reserved. She wears well, keeps cheerful, sticks jasmine flowers in her hair and looks youthful. She is all the time plying Balu with her persistent inquiry, what else he likes to take. The transformation in her look and manner is well depicted. Balu's departure from home after marriage for a new house in Lali Extension makes her feel sad and lonely. Balu goes to live there along with his wife, Brinda. Margaya arranges for a separate house for them against her will. He does it for two reasons. First, Balu's wife is a modern girl who should live in a modern house in a new locality. Secondly, since Balu is a grown-up young man, he should establish his own independent house. She is like Narayan's many women characters who remain contented with their household life and consider the fulfillment of the interests of their family as end in itself. Such women are, as a class, known by their home-bound, traditional and conservative commitments. The character of Balu. Balu is the only child of his parents, Margaya and Meenakshi. He is born after 12 years of their marriage. He is the only child. But his father is always busy with his financial transactions. He has neither the time nor the intention to come back home in time to spend a few moments of leisure with his son. His mother is busy with the domestic chores and has hardly any time for him. Thus, Balu grows neglected and isolated in his early childhood. This has an adverse impact on his later growth. Balu turns into a stubborn and obstinate child because of the utter negligence by his parents. He runs away with his father's valuable accounts book and throws it into the gutter and stands there smiling. He reaps the childish joy by teasing his parents. 12. Balu hates books, studies, teachers and schools. He failed the 10th examination despite tuition at home. Margaya encourages his child to insult his teachers. He becomes the secretary of the school. He instigates him to boss others. Balu's teachers are in the awe of him as he is the son of the secretary of the school. His teachers solve his questions and get him good marks only to keep their job intact. Balu drinks and wastes money lavishly in restaurants. This is perhaps the biggest blunder committed by Margaya. When the boy performs badly, Margaya shouts wildly at him and the boy runs away to freedom in Madras. He dictates his terms which his father religiously observes after his return to Malgudi. He is married to Brinda only to be corrected. Balu is left free to do whatever he likes. He comes under the evil influence of Dr. Pal. He indulges himself in drinking, gambling, womanizing and smoking. He remains away from home till midnight. He demands the share of his property in a threatening way. He speaks the language of a hooligan or ruffian. At the instance of Dr. Pal, Balu witnesses against his father for latter's assault on Dr. Pal. Balu is rudderless and aimless. He has no achievements, except his father's unbounded wealth, that too he loses towards the end. Margaya cannot be absolved of the responsibility of spoiling his son. He is callously indifferent to the fatherly duties of upbringing a child. The character of Brinda. The other woman character in the novel is Brinda, the wife of Balu. She is said to be extremely fair. Her father is the owner of a tea estate in Mempi Hills. Margaya considers her to be a good match for his son. He induces the priest to declare the horoscopes of the two as compatible on a temptation of payment of extra fee. She gives birth to a child. She remains confined inside her room with Balu for the most part of the day. She is equally respectful to her father-in-law, Margaya, when he visits them in their new house in Lali Extension at night. 13. After his tiff with Balu in his office during the day, she keeps on standing as a mark of respect to him while talking to him. Margaya has to ask her to sit. In spite of her good qualities, Brinda falls a victim to idol Balu's evil habits in the company of Dr. Pal. Brinda discloses these movements of Balu to Margaya when the latter insists upon her to expose the facts to him. Margaya is just out of the main entrance of the house when Balu gets out of the car. She calmly opens the door to let her husband come in and puts off the light of the house. Brinda shows a remarkable capacity for adaptability to changing circumstances or to ups and downs of life. Similarly, she views Balu's wrong activities with accommodating attitude so that the peace and normalcy of their household is maintained. Moreover, when Margaya goes bankrupt and the new house has to be sold off, she returns with Balu to her in-laws' house. She is unruffled and takes it as a part of life. The author's central concern in this novel is to build up Margaya's character, who is queerly possessed with a desire for establishing a financial empire. He seems to reach the crest all at once. But ironically, his so-called financial empire collapses in no time simply by his one misdoing, i.e., the beating of Dr. Pal, who later on spreads rumors against his financial transactions. He is reduced to insolvency and advises his son to start his career like him in front of the Central Land Mortgage Cooperative Bank under the banyan tree. He goes through the full cycle of fate and meets the situation of square one. Viewed against such a thematic pattern, the role of women characters becomes crucial. Glossary: a cadaverous man, a living skeleton, slim. An aphrodisiac maker, arousing, intensifying sexual desire. An uncanny fellow, strange and mysteriously unsettling, careless antecedents, the relationship of preceding something in time or order. 14.